A millionaire stormed into his ex-fiancée's wedding with a waitress on his arm, and the whole room froze the moment she lifted her eyes. No one knew her name, but the bride did something strange. She paled, as if the girl she once ruined had come back to collect a debt. What happened next shocked every guest in that hall. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Ethan Monroe stood alone in his glass-walled office on the 42nd floor, the city glittering beneath him like a silent audience waiting for his next mistake. In his hand was a white wedding envelope, elegant, expensive, and cruel. He tore it open, expecting a slap, but the sting still hit harder than he imagined. Vanessa Hathaway and Adrian Cooper cordially invite. The names bled into each other. His jaw tightened, the paper crumpling inside his fist as heat flared across his chest. Vanessa, the woman who once told him he was too unpredictable, too bold, too much of a risk to build a life with. Now she was marrying the safe choice Adrian Cooper, a man so polished and traditional that even his shadow looked respectable. She walked out on Ethan the moment his startup hit turbulence, then found a smoother ride and never looked back. And now this? A wedding invitation? No. A message. A reminder. A dare. Before he could rip it apart, Logan Reeves strode into the office with the casual arrogance of someone who'd seen Ethan at his worst and lived to joke about it. He picked up the discarded envelope and whistled. She really sent you this. Man, if you show up alone, she wins before you even park the car. Ethan let out a short, humorless breath. She thinks I'll walk in looking like a pity exhibit. Not happening. Then don't walk in alone. Logan planted himself against the edge of the desk. Bring someone she can't predict. Someone who'll haunt her for months. Ethan shot him a look. Meaning what? A model? An actress? A tech CEO? Logan laughed. Those are exactly the women Vanessa expects. You need someone who walks in and makes her wonder how you even found her. Ethan turned back toward the city, the invitation still burning in his hand. He didn't want elegance or status or any of the women who floated around his circles like curated ornaments. Vanessa would roll her eyes and assume he was trying too hard. No, he needed someone from a world she couldn't manipulate, couldn't categorize, couldn't control. Someone who would make Vanessa doubt her own narrative. Late that night, frustration still simmering in his chest, Ethan left the office and wandered into a small diner near the building, a place he'd never bother with on a normal day. The neon sign flickered overhead. The scent of coffee and something fried hung in the air. He slid into a booth, loosened his tie, and let silence settle around him, until a voice cut straight through it. You gonna order something? She asked. Or just stare at that menu like it offended you? He looked up, startled. The waitress standing before him had tired eyes but a posture that refused to bend. Her ponytail was messy, her apron smudged, yet nothing about her felt small. She held his gaze without flinching, and for the first time all day, Ethan felt a spark, sharp, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. Ariana Bennett. She didn't know his name. She didn't care about his money. She didn't soften her tone to please him. And Ethan Monroe had no idea that the woman who just challenged him in a worn-out diner would become the most unpredictable move he'd ever make. Ariana returned a few minutes later with a glass of water and the same unimpressed expression. Ethan watched her move between tables, quick, competent, scanning the room like she'd done this 1,000 times, and still refused to be defeated by it. When she stopped at his booth again, she arched a brow. So? You ready to order now, or do you need the chef to explain the menu to you personally? He almost laughed. Almost. No one talked to him like that. Not even Logan. Rough night, he muttered. Looks like it, she replied, jotting something on her pad before glancing up again. People with that face either got dumped or got sued. Which one are you? Ethan blinked. Neither. Then someone pissed you off, she concluded, walking away before he could answer. For reasons he couldn't explain, he kept watching her, the way she balanced plates with practiced ease, the way she forced a smile for customers who didn't deserve it, the way her eyes dimmed when she thought no one was looking. She carried exhaustion like a second skin, but her voice sharp, fearless, belonged to someone who had once lived a very different life. When she returned to drop the bill on the table, she studied him openly. All right. Out with it. What's eating you? Ethan tapped the bill with his fingertip. If I told you I needed someone to go to my ex-fiancée's wedding with me, would you believe it? Ariana's mouth fell open for a second before a laugh burst out. Is that supposed to be a joke? Are you auditioning for a date? Something like that. She narrowed her eyes, assessing him. And why me? You look like someone who can afford a lineup. Exactly the problem, he replied. Vanessa expects every predictable choice. I need someone she wouldn't see coming. Ariana leaned back, arms crossed. And you think I'm unpredictable? I think you don't flinch around me, he said simply. That's rare. For the first time, her expression faltered. Just a flicker. Something wounded hiding behind confidence. She masked it quickly. Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not dressing up to help you make your ex jealous. This isn't jealousy, Ethan said, his tone turning steady. It's strategy, and I'd pay you $20,000. Ariana's brows shot up. 20 what? Why would anyone pay that kind of money for a waitress to show up at a wedding? Because you're not just a waitress, he answered without hesitation. Her breath stalled. A second stretched between them, quiet, aware, unsettling. Ariana finally exhaled. I've known another world before, but life had other plans, and now I'm here, serving pie at midnight. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. He only knew one thing. He wanted her at that wedding, and not because of Vanessa. Ariana stepped closer to the booth. If I say yes, I'm not pretending to be anyone else. I don't want you to pretend, Ethan said. I want the woman who didn't even blink when I walked in. Ariana stared at him a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Fine, I'll go. But don't expect me to be polite. I wouldn't dare. She gave a faint, crooked smile, grabbed her jacket, and pushed open the diner door. Wind rushed in, brushing against her hair as she stepped outside. On the other side of the window, Ethan watched her disappear into the night, a question pounding in his chest. Who was she really? And why did choosing her suddenly feel like the most dangerous and inevitable decision of his life? Ethan waited outside the Beverly Hills boutique, checking his watch as sunlight bounced off the spotless windows. He half expected Ariana to cancel, to send a text saying she'd changed her mind, or to walk in timidly and shrink under the weight of luxury she wasn't used to. But when she stepped off a city bus and pushed open the glass door without hesitation, he straightened involuntarily. She moved through the boutique like someone who had been here many times before, chin lifted, steps measured, completely unbothered by the hush of wealth surrounding her. Ethan's breath paused as he wondered, for the first time, who exactly he had invited into his world. Inside, the lead stylist rushed forward with the eager smile of someone ready to sculpt a billionaire's date into a predictable statement piece. She held up shimmering gowns, red silks, diamond-studded accessories, the kind of glamour that demanded attention rather than earned it. Ariana shook her head at each one. Not me, she said, her voice calm but firm. She drifted toward a black dress, clean lines, no glitter, no theatrics, elegant in a way money couldn't fabricate. When she held it against herself, the entire room seemed to shift. This wasn't a woman being transformed. This was a woman returning to something she once knew well. When the door opened and Ethan was invited into the fitting room for the reveal, he didn't move at first. Ariana stood in front of the mirror, her posture straight, her expression collected, her beauty sharpened by quiet confidence instead of adornment. She didn't look like a waitress. She didn't even look like a date. She looked like someone who owned the room. He forced himself to breathe. You didn't tell me you had experience with this kind of world, he said. Ariana met his gaze through the mirror and offered a faint smile. There are things I don't tell anyone. During the drive, the air between them felt charged, not tense but alive, as if both were waiting for the other to break the silence first. Ariana rested her hand against the window, watching the city blur by. So what exactly do you expect tonight? She asked. Ethan hesitated, unsure how honest to be. I expect Vanessa to look at me and wonder what she walked away from. Ariana didn't look at him. And do you want her jealous, or do you want her wrong? Ethan didn't answer, and that alone told her everything. She shifted her gaze back to him, studying him the way she'd studied the boutique staff, as if peeling back layers he didn't know he had. Ethan felt exposed in a way few people had managed to make him feel. Ariana had known him a total of 12 hours, and somehow she saw straight through the armor he'd spent years building. It irritated him. It intrigued him. It scared him more than he wanted to admit. Then she said something that made him turn fully toward her. People like Vanessa don't fear losing love. They fear losing control. He watched her carefully. Sounds like you've met women like her before. Ariana looked away. I've met worse. As the car pulled closer to the wedding venue, Ethan felt a sudden and unfamiliar worry squeeze his chest. Would Ariana be overwhelmed? Would this world he dragged her into swallow her whole? But when he voiced a sliver of it, she let out a quiet laugh. Are you afraid they'll judge me, or afraid they'll judge you for picking someone like me? The question hit deeper than he expected. They arrived at the grand hotel entrance flooded with cameras, gold lighting, and a crowd lined like a runway. Ariana looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable, then reached for the door handle. Come on, she said softly. Let's see the woman who broke you. Ethan stepped out beside her, realizing, with an unsettling twist in his stomach, that he was suddenly more afraid of losing Ariana than of facing Vanessa. The moment Ariana stepped out of the car, conversations broke off mid-sentence. Her dress moved like ink poured over water, smooth, precise, impossible to look away from. Phones lifted, cameras clicked. Even the string quartet faltered for a beat. She didn't flinch under the scrutiny. In fact, she met the curious stares with a polite, almost serene smile. A guest whispered to another, "Who is she? She's not on any of the social lists." And that was exactly the kind of whisper Vanessa Hathaway would hate. Ethan felt the shift instantly. Normally, he commanded attention by simply existing in a room, but tonight, he felt as if he were following Ariana's lead. She walked with a confidence that wasn't taught, it was remembered. She slipped her arm through his like it was the most natural thing in the world, guiding rather than being guided. He couldn't decide if it made him proud or nervous. Vanessa and Adrian made their entrance to greet the guests. The bride froze when she saw Ethan, but the real impact hit when her gaze landed on Ariana. Something in Vanessa's expression tightened recognition, or perhaps fear disguised as curiosity. Ariana extended her hand with perfect composure. "Thank you for inviting us. Your wedding is interesting." The pause was subtle, but sharp enough to cut. Vanessa's smile flickered. She leaned slightly toward Adrian and whispered, "I swear I've seen her before." The vulnerability in her voice told Ethan something he hadn't expected. Vanessa was rattled by Ariana, and not because of beauty alone. There was something deeper, something familiar. Ethan led Ariana inside, but the room seemed to bend toward her. Men in tailored suits stopped mid-conversation. Women in couture gowns narrowed their eyes, measuring her. Ariana didn't seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't care. When the music began, Ethan offered his hand. Ariana took it with a grace so practiced it startled him. She moved effortlessly, guiding her steps with quiet authority. "You've done this before," he murmured. She smiled without answering. During their dance, a group of wealthy investors approached, intending to congratulate Ethan on his latest acquisition. Yet within minutes, they were directing their questions to Ariana. She responded with insight, humor, and a sharp business instinct Ethan had not expected. "You work in finance?" one of them asked. Ariana shook her head. "Just someone who pays attention." Ethan watched, a strange blend of admiration and unease swirling inside him. Then Preston Bezos stepped forward. His gaze lingered on Ariana with an intensity that unsettled even him. "You seem familiar," Preston said. "Are you sure we haven't met?" Ariana replied softly. "People often mistake me for someone else." But Ethan saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the tiny breath she caught. Something about this world wasn't new to her. It was a ghost she wasn't ready to acknowledge. Vanessa reappeared and grabbed Ethan's arm, her voice low and sharp. "Tell me who she is. And don't lie to me. I know I've seen her somewhere." Ethan pulled away. "You lost the right to ask me anything." But the confrontation left a knot of unease in his chest. What did Vanessa recognize? Ariana noticed the tension when he returned. "She got to you," she said quietly. He shook his head, but she wasn't fooled. "Ethan, you don't have to protect me. I chose to be here." Later, Ariana slipped onto the outdoor balcony, letting the night air settle her breath. Below her, the elite of Los Angeles mingled like polished wolves. She whispered to herself, "It's time. Well, Behind her, Ethan watched from the doorway, realizing something terrifying and irresistible at once. Ariana Bennett hadn't just entered Vanessa's wedding. She had entered a past none of them were prepared to face. Whispers floated across the ballroom like smoke the moment Ariana and Ethan stepped away from the dance floor. Conversations softened into murmurs, eyes trailed after her, and the room buzzed with one collective question. Who was she? Not a model, not an actress, not a face anyone recognized, yet she carried herself with a poise that made even the groom's family pause. Ethan watched the subtle commotion, a mix of pride and unease tightening inside his chest. He had brought her here as a strategy, a statement, but Ariana was quickly becoming something else, an enigma that even he couldn't decipher. Across the room, Vanessa's eyes tracked Ariana with a sharp, calculating stare. She didn't speak at first. She only studied the woman in the black dress the way someone might study a threat they hadn't anticipated. Adrian leaned closer and whispered, "You all right?" But Vanessa didn't blink. "I've seen that face before," she muttered. "She looks like someone from the Bennett Project." Adrian's brows knit, confusion clouding his expression, but Vanessa was already walking toward Ethan. She arrived with a smile stretched too tight to be genuine. Ariana returned it with a graceful dip of her head, the kind of courtesy that somehow felt more commanding than polite. Vanessa wasted no time. "So, what do you do?" she asked, her tone thinly veiled with suspicion. Ariana shrugged lightly. "I'm a waitress, but that's only one part of my life." The answer landed like a dart. Vanessa's expression flickered recognition, disbelief, before she masked it behind another stiff smile. Ariana leaned in slightly and spoke softly enough for only Vanessa to hear. "Some people change their lives for the better. Others change their values just to climb higher." Vanessa stiffened, the color in her cheeks draining almost instantly. Ethan saw the shift and stepped between them, pulling Ariana away. "What was that?" he whispered, frustrated and thrown off balance. "You said you'd come with me, not interrogate her." Ariana's eyes turned sharp. "You brought me here to play a part, Ethan, but I won't play the quiet one. And you should stop pretending Vanessa is just an ex. She's much more dangerous than that." Ethan had no answer. Ariana walked back into the ballroom, reclaiming the attention of investors and executives without effort. She discussed market shifts and corporate strategy, as though she'd sat in boardrooms her whole life. Ethan watched her navigate the conversations with unnerving skill. He wanted to admire her confidence, but the more she spoke, the more the pieces refused to fit. A waitress should not know these things, not this fluently, not this naturally. Preston Bezos approached, his presence commanding as the crowd parted for him. He studied Ariana's face long and hard before saying, "I've met your father, haven't I?" The question hit like a jolt. Ariana froze just long enough for Ethan to notice, her breath catching before she forced a small smile back in place. "People often think they recognize me," she said quietly. But Ethan had seen it the first crack in her composure since the night began. He guided her outside to a quiet garden lit by lanterns and moonlight. "Ariana, what's going on? You know more about this world than you say. Vanessa recognized you. Preston recognized you. Who are you really?" Her gaze drifted away, pain quickly swallowing the defiance in her eyes. "One day," she murmured, "you'll know everything." Have said. Inside, Vanessa slipped into a hallway and whispered urgently into her phone. "Find everything on Ariana Bennett. Tonight." Her voice carried a tremor that wasn't anger but fear. Ariana returned to the balcony, staring down at the glittering scene she had once belonged to, whispering to herself, "This is only the beginning." And Ethan, watching her from a distance he couldn't close, felt the unmistakable truth settle over him. Ariana Bennett wasn't just part of his plan anymore. She was the storm gathering right in the center of his life. The drive home was suffocatingly quiet. Streetlights washed through the windows in long, cold streaks, illuminating Ariana's still profile. She didn't look angry. She looked haunted. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel, each second of silence pressing heavier on his chest. "You were incredible tonight," he finally said. "But I need to understand. Who are you really, Ariana?" She didn't turn her head. "I'm someone who trusted the wrong people once," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "And I'm still paying the price." He wanted to ask more, to reach out, to pull her out of whatever dark place she was slipping into. But she opened the door the moment the car stopped in front of her building. "I need a walk," she said. "You don't have to follow me." Then she shut the door gently, leaving Ethan with nothing but the sound of her footsteps fading into the night. Logan called just minutes later, catching Ethan's turmoil through the screen. "Buddy," Logan sighed. "I've seen that look on you exactly once when Vanessa left. This girl, she's not simple, and that scares you." The next morning, clarity struck like a spark in the dark. Ethan needed answers, needed the truth she refused to give. He drove straight to Marcus Ledger's office, handed him a photo of Ariana at the wedding, and said, "Find out everything you can about her, and don't let her know." Marcus nodded, reading the urgency in Ethan's tight voice. Meanwhile, Ariana walked into her dim apartment and went straight to the wooden box on her shelf, the one she'd avoided opening for months. Inside were old documents, newspaper clippings, and a photo of her father, Daniel Bennett, smiling beside the logo of Bennett Group. She touched the picture with trembling fingers. "I'm getting it back, Dad," she whispered. "Your name, your truth, everything she stole." Before dawn fully broke, Ethan's phone rang. Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. "Ethan, you need to sit down." Ethan listened as Marcus explained everything. The rise and collapse of Bennett Group, the scandal that ruined Daniel Bennett's reputation, the whispers of corruption that drove him to despair, and the woman who orchestrated the fall, Vanessa Hathaway. Ethan felt the floor beneath him tilt. The invitation, the wedding, the tension, it all snapped into place. Ariana hadn't walked into Vanessa's wedding for him. She had walked into the lion's den for her father. Ethan drove to Ariana's apartment without thinking, his pulse pounding. When she opened the door, her eyes were swollen but steady, as if she had already braced herself for this moment. "Ariana," he said quietly, "what did Vanessa do to your father?" Her breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like a child trying not to break. Then her voice cracked. "She destroyed him. She destroyed everything. And she made the world believe it was his fault. My father died carrying a lie she created." To Debise, Ethan stepped back, the weight of her truth slamming into him. Ariana Bennett hadn't come into his life to help him win a game. She had come to finish a war. Ariana stood with her back to him, the silence inside the small apartment so heavy that Ethan could hear the shaky rhythm of his own breath. When she finally turned, her eyes were red but eerily steady, as if she had been holding this truth inside her for years and had finally run out of strength to cage it. "You want the truth?" she whispered. "Then you have to hear all of it." Ethan didn't move. He didn't blink. Something in her voice told him this was the moment everything changed. Ariana sank into the edge of the couch, her fingers trembling as she clasped them together. "My father, Daniel Bennett, trusted the wrong person," she began, her voice thin but controlled. "He partnered with Vanessa in a real estate project worth hundreds of millions. He believed she saw his integrity. She only saw an opportunity." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to continue. "She moved money through accounts he didn't control, planted falsified invoices, and then leaked everything so he would take the fall. She called it a necessary sacrifice." Ariana's voice cracked. "My father didn't die because he was guilty. He died because he was betrayed." The words struck Ethan like blows. Every memory of Vanessa, her sharp smiles, her subtle manipulation, the way she framed obedience as love, flashed through him with sickening clarity. All the things he dismissed as quirks now felt like warnings he had never listened to. He stared at Ariana, stunned by the weight of what she carried alone. Ariana wiped at her cheek, angry at her own tears. "The night you walked into the diner, I didn't agree to go with you because I cared about your pride. I went because it was my one chance to look her in the eye and not be the girl she destroyed." She hesitated, voice softening. "But then you weren't what I expected. You were kind when you didn't have to be, and that scared me more than she ever did." Ethan knelt in front of her, the sincerity in his voice unguarded and raw. "I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. I'm sorry you had to fight alone. You deserved better from everyone." Ariana lowered her gaze, and for the first time since he met her, he sensed not steel, not fire, but vulnerability. "I don't need rescuing," she whispered. "I just need someone who won't leave when things get dark." Ethan looked up at her. "I can do that. I want to do that." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. It was a truth finally spoken aloud. But the fragile moment shattered when Ethan's phone vibrated non-stop. Notification after notification appeared. Photos from the wedding splashed across gossip sites. Headlines screaming, "Millionaire brings waitress to ex's wedding in revenge stunt." Others were crueler. "Daughter of disgraced tycoon resurfaces seeking fame?" Ariana stiffened, her breath hitching as the headlines spiraled out of control. The photo of her father, once dignified, now sat beneath captions dripping with mockery. The world had not only attacked her, they had dragged her father's ghost into the fire again. Ethan immediately called his PR team. He called lawyers. He tried to shield her, control the damage, block the spread. But Ariana recoiled as if his help were another betrayal. "You think I'm a victim?" she whispered, voice breaking. "You think I need you to clean me up?" He froze, stunned by her pain. "Ariana, that's not what I—" "Don't pity me," she choked. "Don't treat me like I'm breakable." She grabbed her coat, avoiding his gaze. "I can't breathe here, Ethan. I need to stand on my own 2 feet, or I'll drown." She opened the door, rain lashing against the hallway floor. Ethan followed her to the doorway. "Ariana, please don't shut me out." She didn't look back. "Don't follow me," she said softly, almost gently. "If I can't learn to stand alone, then everything I'm fighting for is meaningless." She disappeared down the stairwell, swallowed by the storm outside, and Ethan stayed standing in the doorway, soaked by rain he couldn't feel, knowing the truth with painful clarity. He had just lost her at the exact moment he wanted most to hold on. Ariana returned to the diner like someone retreating into an old shell. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of coffee machines, the worn smell of bacon grease, none of it comforted her, but it grounded her, gave her something to cling to. She scrubbed tables long after the lunch crowd thinned out, gripping the rag so hard her knuckles whitened. But customers stared, whispering behind menus, recognizing her from the scandal. "Isn't that the girl from the wedding? The one tied to that old fraud case?" Their words stuck to her skin like mud she couldn't scrub off. Her chest tightened until she could hardly breathe. Ethan found her behind the building, hauling a trash bag heavier than she could manage. Her hands shook as she lifted it, and when he stepped forward to help, the bag slipped from her grasp and burst open. She gasped, frustration and exhaustion breaking through her armor. "Don't," she whispered when Ethan reached for her. "Don't be kind to me right now." Her voice trembled. "If you're kind, I'll lean on you, and if I lean, I'll fall." Ethan's heart cracked. He touched her shoulder lightly, giving her the space she needed but refusing to back away. "I'm not here to take over your life," he said quietly. "I'm here so you don't have to face this alone." She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. For a moment, she let herself feel the safety of his presence. Then she straightened, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. "I don't want to be anyone's burden." "You aren't," Ethan replied. "You never were." For the first time, she almost believed him, but the fragile peace didn't last long. Preston Bezos walked into the diner the next afternoon, drawing eyes instantly. He sat at the counter and waited until Ariana approached. "You don't belong here," he said calmly. "Your mind is sharper than half the executives I've met. Come work for me." Ethan, arriving at the door just in time to see the exchange, felt a jolt of jealousy twist through him. Ariana sensed it too and stepped back. "I need something that's mine," she said. "Something I earn." Preston nodded. "Then let me give you the chance to prove it." Ariana agreed to the job later that night. Ethan tried to hide his worry, but she saw straight through him. "This isn't about you," she said sharply. "You don't get to decide who I become." "I'm not trying to decide anything," he shot back. "I'm trying to protect you from people who use power as leverage." "Like Vanessa?" Ariana asked. "Or like you?" The silence after her words was devastating. Their argument spiraled quickly, two people who cared too deeply but didn't know how to say it without hurting each other. Ariana's voice trembled with anger and fear. "You don't know what it's like to live every day preparing for the next blow." Ethan's chest tightened. "I know what it's like to lose someone I trusted," he said. "I'm trying to keep that from happening to you." But she pulled away. "You can't save me from myself." They separated without another word. Hours later, Vanessa struck again. Fake documents leaked online claims that Ariana herself had mishandled charity funds years earlier. Completely fabricated, but believable enough to ignite a wildfire. Headlines multiplied, cruel and relentless. Bennett family scandal continues. Like father, like daughter. Ariana's name had become a weapon. Ethan tried desperately to reach her. Calls went unanswered, messages unread. He went to Preston's building, but Ariana refused to see him. With each silent day, the distance between them grew more painful, more impossible. Then the letter arrived. A subpoena. Ariana Bennett was being called as a key witness in Vanessa Hathaway's case. Ariana stared at the paper in her hands, her breath shuddering. The storm she'd spent her life running from had finally come full circle. "It's time," she whispered. "Either I fall, or I rise." Miles away, Ethan received the same news. He closed his eyes, whispering into the empty room. "You're not alone, Ariana. Not this time. Even if you won't let me stand beside you, I'll be right behind you when the world comes at you." It was the kind of promise a man made only once in his life, and it would lead them both into a battle that neither could walk away from unscathed. Monday morning rose gray and unforgiving as Ariana walked toward the courthouse, cameras exploding in flashes the moment she stepped from the car. Microphones lunged forward. "Did you crash Vanessa's wedding? Are you avenging your father? Did you manipulate Ethan Monroe to get here?" She kept her head lifted, her hands steady, forcing her breath to move through the tightening in her chest. She had been alone in storms far worse than this. But today, she wasn't walking toward the fire to survive it. She was walking into it to end it. Inside the waiting room, Ethan stood silently near the window, hands tucked into his pockets. He didn't reach for her. He didn't try to shield her. Instead, he said softly, "If you fall, I'm here. But today, you're strong enough not to." Something in Ariana eased for the first time in days. She nodded, not because she needed permission, but because she finally believed someone could walk beside her without holding her down. When her name was called, she stepped into the courtroom with her spine straight, her pulse steady. Vanessa's lawyers pounced immediately. They projected emails, fake ones, suggesting she'd coordinated with Ethan to attack Vanessa publicly. They displayed photos cut at strategic angles to paint her as a gold digger. They read forged statements claiming she'd plotted revenge since the day her father died. Ariana let each accusation hit without flinching. She had learned long ago that silence could be a shield, not a surrender. Then came the final blow. "Tell us, Miss Bennett," the lawyer sneered. "Are you like your father, willing to steal millions and call it a mistake?" Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Ariana's breath stilled. Ethan surged forward instinctively, but Logan grabbed his arm. Let her fight her own fight. Ariana rose from her seat slowly, hands trembling only slightly. She looked directly at the panel, her voice clear enough to slice through the tension. "My father did not steal anything. He was betrayed by the woman sitting at that table." She pointed toward Vanessa, whose mask cracked for the first time. "He died believing the world thought he was corrupt. I will not let that lie live any longer." She turned then toward Ethan. "And Ethan Monroe was never a target. He wasn't a tool or a pawn. He was my choice." Gasps filled the room again, but this time softer, stunned. Something warm and painful tightened in Ethan's chest. He stood before he even realized he'd moved. "And I choose her," he said, voice ringing through the chamber. "Not because she's perfect, but because she's braver than anyone in this room." Phones lifted, live streams spiked. The narrative online flipped within seconds. Then the doors opened. Marcus walked in and handed the prosecutor a USB drive. What followed unraveled the last thread of Vanessa Hathaway's crafted world. Real emails showing she moved stolen funds, text messages coordinating bribes, receipts documenting hush money transfers, a calendar filled with secret meetings to destroy Daniel Bennett's credibility. With every file displayed, Vanessa's composure fractured further until she lurched to her feet, screaming, "It was his fault. He was weak. I did what I had to do." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. The prosecutor stood. "Vanessa Hathaway, you are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy." Officers moved in. Cameras recorded every second as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Vanessa twisted to Ariana, rage and fear warping her face. "This isn't over. You will regret this." Ariana didn't flinch. She only looked tired, not victorious, not relieved, just tired in a way Ethan had never seen. When the officers dragged Vanessa away, the noise of reporters erupted again. Ethan moved to Ariana and pulled her gently into his arms. She leaned against his shoulder for only a heartbeat before whispering, "I won. So why do I feel nothing?" Ethan held her closer, his voice almost breaking. "Because surviving doesn't feel like winning. but it means you're still here. And for the first time since Daniel Bennett died, Ariana allowed herself to believe that being still here mattered. She disappeared for 3 days. No one reached her. Not Ethan, not Logan, not Marcus. Her phone stayed off, her apartment dark, her world paused in a silence she desperately needed. Ethan barely slept, pacing the penthouse balcony as if he could will her back into existence. Every night he replayed the courtroom, her shaking voice, the emptiness in her eyes after the verdict. He had never felt so helpless. On the 4th morning, Ariana unlocked the door of her childhood home on the outskirts of the city. Dust floated like ghosts in the air. Her father's unfinished architectural sketches lay scattered across the desk. When she touched one, her breath broke. She sank onto the floor and cried, not the sharp, defensive tears she held inside for years, but the soft, unshielded grief of a daughter who never got to say goodbye. When the storm finally passed, something in her chest loosened. Revenge had given her motion, but healing would give her life. That afternoon, Ethan appeared in the doorway. He didn't ask why she left. He didn't ask why she didn't call. He simply said, "I'm not here to take you home. I'm here to hear whatever you choose to say, and to walk with you if you let me." Ariana looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "I'm scared, Ethan." "Of Vanessa?" he asked. She shook her head. "Of loving someone, of losing them, of hurting again." Ethan exhaled. "I'm scared too, but some people are worth being scared for." When he handed her the envelope, she hesitated before opening it. Inside were her father's restored designs, a legal proposal to relaunch Bennett Consulting under her name, and a handwritten note. "Finish his dream. I'll help you start if you want me to." Ariana pressed the papers to her chest, tears rising again. "He believed in integrity," she whispered. "I want to build something he'd be proud of." "Then let's build it," Ethan said softly. "Not out of revenge, out of honor." The weeks that followed reshaped them both. They worked side by side, meeting contractors, reviewing financials, interviewing team members. For the first time, Ariana didn't feel like she was surviving, she felt like she was becoming. And Ethan didn't try to rescue her. He didn't push. He didn't lead. He simply stood beside her, matching her pace, letting trust grow where fear once lived. Preston visited one afternoon, shaking her hand with deep respect. "You endured fire," he said. "Now use it to forge something lasting." Ariana smiled genuinely, something she had almost forgotten how to do. "Thank you," she replied, "for seeing what others didn't." When she and Ethan finally stood alone in the doorway of her new office, sunlight warming their faces, he turned to her quietly. "You don't need me to stand," he said, "but will you let me stand beside you anyway?" Ariana's eyes softened, filling with a gentleness that came only after surviving storms. "Yes," she whispered. "This time, yes." He stepped closer, resting his forehead lightly against hers. "Then let me love you the way you deserved from the start." Later, at the shoreline her father loved most, with waves brushing the sand in slow, steady breaths, Ethan took her hand. No ring, no spectacle, just truth. "Ariana Bennett, will you be my family?" She felt the warmth of his words settle into every fragile place inside her. She nodded, tears shimmering. "I choose you, the way you chose me," and that was all either of them ever needed. When pain is faced, and the past finally releases its grip, love doesn't arrive to replace the scars, it arrives to honor them. There are moments in life when the world feels heavier than we can carry, when every step forward seems to come with its own storm. But somehow, through honesty, patience, and the courage to try again, the heart learns to stand first shakily, then steadily, and finally with a quiet strength no one can take away. Healing never arrives in one big moment. It comes slowly, in small choices to keep going even when it hurts. If you're watching this tonight, or maybe early in the morning with rain tapping against your window, I'd love to hear where you're listening from. What's the weather like there? What part of this journey stayed with you? And if stories like this make your day feel a little lighter, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll keep walking through these moments together, one story, one breath of hope at a time.